Hello again. And here we are with Professor Olle Johansson, and we're checking in with him again. It's been about 6 to 8 months since he shared with us his upcoming study on the pollinators, specifically, I believe, the honeybees. And I invite him to correct me if I'm quite off on that, but this will go with our previous video done last summer. And so we will check in with him and ask him to get us started with Ole, welcome back.
Thank you.
And please tell us what mischief you've been up to since we left off about a half a year ago with
Yeah.
your tell us about your partners, what areas you've ventured into, what you're finding, and that would be very interesting, I believe.
Let me shortly just take you back to the reality of pollinators like honeybees, bumblebees, and many more. As you know, all over the world, in Europe, in United States, etc., there is a dramatic reduction the last 10, 15, 20 years, and no one knows exactly why, or actually far from it. For instance, in the United States, you have lost more than 90% of your American bumblebees, which are crucial for pollination. And in Europe, there are reports, for instance, from Switzerland, but also from Germany, who already in 2017 told us that more than 75% of all pollinators are gone. And this is more than dramatic. And I get every day radio programs, TV programs, newspaper articles, tabloid articles, and so on, asking for knowledge. What is causing this dramatic reduction? And then, some 10, 15 years ago, people did simple experiments, and they are not perfect according to scientific demands, and therefore we would love to replicate, make them all over again. And what they did was to basically expose, for instance, honeybee beehives to the presence of a cell phone. And to make a long story short, what then happened was that the queen collected her worker bees around her, like in a Disney movie, and they just moved away. They flew away and did not return. However, as I said, there are question marks we would like to straighten out to see what actually caused this loss of the local beehive inhabitants. Furthermore, if you, for instance, interview professional beekeepers here in Sweden, for instance, they always will tell you that you cannot put beehives under power lines or close to power installations, because then the production of honey will be very much reduced, both the amount as well as the quality. And all of this points to that man-made artificial electromagnetic fields seems to cause something here that makes the honeybees and other pollinators like the bumblebees not like the situation. And we would like then to both do so-called observational studies, meaning we go out in reality, both in beekeepers, but also wild bees out in the forest, to check what has happened with them. Is there some kind of a clue we can derive from observing them? And then, of course, without harming the bees in any way, we would like to do experimental studies, meaning subject them to the presence of, for instance, a cell phone, a Wi-Fi router, or something similar, to see if they are affected or not. And it's not far-fetched. We have done similar studies, and they are already published together with a Belgian colleague regarding ants. And I can tell you, ants don't like cell phone radiation. They definitely don't like that. And again, there is quite a reduction of ant populations worldwide as well. So there are a lot of warning signs, and before it's just too late, because without the pollinators, no food, and then you cannot feed, for instance, your children what they need of vegetables, fruit, nuts, and other similar food items. So it's really an alarming call here. And to my help, I have colleagues, as you mentioned before. I have an American doctor in California, Dr. Toril Jelter. I have a colleague in Switzerland, Dr. Daniel Favre. I have a colleague here in Sweden, Robert Ferm. And I just recently got a Belgian friend who wants to engage in this. And we are trying to get more and more people to be able to sort of statistically spread out the basis for any conclusion. Is it just in Sweden this would be a problem, or is it just in the United States, or just in Belgium? So far, it seems it's everywhere. And of course, the reduction of pollinators also means a strong reduction of other insects, which we traditionally would not talk about when we talk about pollination and food and honey and so on. And that is in itself also very, very serious, because that means that a lot of birds, like the great tit, they cannot find enough food for themselves as well as raising their babies. So it's an alarming situation. And now in Sweden, it's about to become springtime. And then, of course, the honeybees and other pollinators will wake up from the winter slumber and emerge and come out. So we want to continue the studies now, more or less. We are just waiting for go ahead. But I mean, it's sad to bring up, but our main problem is really to achieve enough funding. When we have approached the governmental funds for this kind of studies, they have not been interested. And why not? Well, the answer is very simple: because they want to electronicify and digitize beehives. They want to introduce the very technology in a big scale that we think maybe are actually hurting these insect populations. And therefore, we got the very firm no, thank you, no such research. And we are trying to collect interested people around the world to help us, but well, it's very, very difficult, to be honest. You know, people are not prone to support us, and there are very few that actually opens their wallets, and we need further people to help us.
Of course, of course. That's the little detail behind all of this type of work. Of course you do. And if I may interject based on what you just shared, we used to host, we worked with a local beekeeper and hosted beehives, allowed him to set them up on our property and tend to them. We didn't even need to touch them, which was great. We got an education on how they worked. He was very free. He would pull out the frames, show us what was happening, like the piping. I think you've mentioned that the bee behaviors do, and all of that. And the first year we had that, he had a bumper crop bee honey production, and it was so fabulous. It was all based on our local flowers of lavender and just wonderful flowers. So that was really wonderful. But over the years, the production and the population of the bees diminished significantly, not under any power lines, but not too far from some monopoles and cell towers. But sadly, we just said we can't take this. It's just too sad. To the last time he came, they were all dead
Oh,
and no honey. And I mean, I cried.
you may remember that Daniel Favre and myself, we have already published a paper that kind of rhymes with what you tell me about honeybees that seem to be, as you said, with the piping signals and other sound signals, buzzing of all different types. During New Year's Eve, the year before the last year, we could see that they were heavily affected. And as you know, there is an enormous peak worldwide because everyone wants to either call or send text messages, Happy New Year, at the exact moment. And it went on for hours as these moments would roll around the planet.
So dismissing the link of insect decline and other health hazards to invisible wireless radiation is an easy thing to do. But all the signs point to a strong connection between the two. From bugs to birdsong, small things disappearing easily escape our notice. But insects make our life possible. Their destruction breaks a vital link in the food chain.
Wow.
So we were able to publish a study on that. And we, again, would like to continue that kind of observational studies. And it's, of
Absolutely.
course, hypothetical. We need to know more details to tie it all together. But I don't want to sound melodramatic in any way, but the clock is really ticking. I mean, it's rapidly going down. I was shocked to learn the more than 90% reduction of bumblebees in the
Oh,
United States. It's
shocking.
appalling, you know. It's just too
Oh,
much. And I hope that we will be able to put some light on this before it's too late.
absolutely. And we will be interjecting that visual that you talked about to there's nothing like a picture, you know, 1,000 words and all that. But in the grocery store, the marketplace where you see all the bins of the produce as they are now, but for how much longer, we don't know. Like you say, the clock is ticking, but it
Yeah,
shows how it will look when all of the pollinators are gone.
yeah,
And, you know, I mean, for everyone, I don't know about you, but I've come to eat for a living, and everyone else who does so might want to pay attention because cause and effect. And here you are, bless you, Professor Johansson and your team.
thank
You
you.
are already getting into this with your own dime and time, bless your heart, with very little to no financial backing.
Yeah,
And I, like you said, I can't think if we if we don't eat, we don't live. It kind
no,
of comes down to that. It doesn't get any more basic than that.
yeah,
So, yes, we're going to talk about how we can better help you, and also related to the birds, with all of this frequency around, does it not interfere with their internal migration, their radar, if you will, to help them get from point A to B? I've understood that even species of birds who typically, for example, will fly in from Canada here in the United States across the United States to Mexico in the winter, that they might end up in Stockholm, Sweden,
yeah.
because they're
I
all
know.
knocked off
Yeah,
their whack.
yeah.
They've lost their navigation system.
Yeah, and we have, Russian tundra birds that also should fly towards the south, and instead they fly westwards, ending up in Stockholm, as you say,
They're confused,
completely wrong,
right?
and something is going on, and we need to investigate this before, again, it's too late, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we will, you know, be getting into that. And I think I've shared that but my creative bent is I'm a nature photographer and I specialize in birds, and I'm trying to learn as much as possible. And I love that you share that that same passion for the birds and naturally the bees and all living things,
Yeah,
and this frequency with the proliferation and with the upcoming 5G, and you know we're working on getting more word out about you know the implications of the rollout this year. But you know, how much more can our universe, in the ionosphere, whatever, how much more can we take before we're all fried? And it's just so alarming. And naturally, the smaller the organism, the faster they fall.
yeah,
And you know, and the more water they contain, the faster they fall. And
yeah,
the children, especially, are also, you know, they're if they get in between a 5G cell tower and someone with a 5G device, it's not a good thing. So, absolutely.
the upcoming higher and higher frequencies, meaning shorter and shorter and shorter wavelengths. There are already scientific publications pointing to that the future 5G wavelengths will be exactly proportional to various pollinators. So the question is not only are we frying ourselves, but are we already frying them? And maybe. And as a scientist, I want to study it. And of course, if there isn't a problem, as the authorities, governments, parliaments tell us, then I want to see it so we can steer away from that culprit and instead focus on the real cause for
Of
this
course.
decline.
Of course. I'm sure you have no skin in the game for like your suspicions and whatever. I mean, I'm sure you hope you're wrong and
Of
maybe it
course.
might be something else, as do
Yeah,
I. We're just
yeah.
looking to uncover the truth and that's what we're looking for with that. But
Yeah. And
abs
I've talked to especially American, but also European beekeepers, fantastic people, I must say,
Mhm.
and some of their organizations I've been in contact with, and they're all very, very, very concerned.
Yes.
And they are craving answers, craving information, and well, we hope we will be able to get it for them, you know.
Absolutely, and I'm been looking at other organizations and coming out, and I sometimes I think that the organizations that are super big, the nature conservancies, whatever, that sometimes I don't know. I sometimes if an organization is too big to fail, maybe they're too big. Maybe they have biased opinions and
Yeah,
they're steering. It seems that many are kind of steering, they're seeing this decline in the pollinators or whatever, and they're saying we've got to stop the pesticides, we've got to
yeah,
improve the habitats.
yeah,
And when someone suggests, such as yourself, how about looking into considering as a contributing factor possibly the electromagnetic frequencies coming
yeah,
from wireless technology?
yeah,
How about that? And
yeah.
so many times those suggestions get shut down, right?
Yeah. And of course, I mean, we are not naive. We realize that pesticides, insecticide, habitat, and so on are also very, very important factors. But we just want to introduce another one since there are already a number of scientific papers. But as I said before, they lack a lot of detail, and we need to add it, replicate them, and move further forward. And maybe we will be able to. So.
Absolutely, and holding that vision for you, and Ollie, as we're, I think you mentioned something, and if you already covered this, I apologize, but it seems as though you said you and your colleagues were into some special testing studies, pursuing some theories in last summer.
Yeah.
And did you do some special things last summer you'd like to share
Yeah,
with us?
we had it set up in Sweden at the bee farming place, and we were able to borrow a few of the hives, and we tried to perform much more detailed investigations using uh, detailed photography, filming, etc., and also to record sounds from the inside of the beehives. And unfortunately, our equipment were not optimal, far from it. But such equipment is expensive. So again, we hope to be able to purchase much better equipment maybe this year or maybe next year, to be able to really pin down what's going on inside the hive, because I think that's the real focal point for the reaction. The bees will communicate on the board just outside of the beehive, but most of the communication will be inside. And therefore, we would love to be able to pick up on it. So we had grand ideas, and we wanted to do things, but we failed to quite a big number, you know. So we need to remake it again. Yeah.
Well, through no fault of your own, I might suggest, and I believe you shared with me, was it Daniel Favre had
Yeah.
done some studies, and with the equipment he does have, and put together some papers he wanted to get published in like
Yeah.
peer-reviewed journals or whatever,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
wasn't he rejected because his
Yeah.
studies were not done with the state-of-the-art equipment?
Exactly. You are so right about that. And I also have a manuscript that is 100% ready, and we have submitted it actually to one of the biggest beekeeper journals in the United States. And maybe they will say yes. But I see that, again, many of these organizations, they have kind of bought into the modern society, and they have a hard time to think that their harmless cell phone they carry with them and have great fun with, that it should in any way impact their so much loved beehives. And therefore it's difficult to get these papers accepted. But I think it was you who told me that the very, very famous author J.K. Rowling with the Harry Potter books, she was actually rejected 12 times before a publisher said, okay, we will publish this book then. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so
And
we have to
yes,
keep on. But
absolutely.
again, with all due respect for J.K. Rowling, I don't think Harry Potter is as important as saving the bees.
Understand. Two different worlds, very
Yeah,
important in her world, but it's exactly the same, only totally different, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yes, I totally agree. I agree with
But
that.
I mean, the do you say endurance she must have had, the backbone, the mental? I'm so impressed.
What we
And
have in common, dear Ollie, may I
well,
put out there, we have in common with J.K. Rowling. She
yeah,
did that series for her children, I understand.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we are
But I mean,
doing,
I would have given up much earlier.
but you know what? We're doing this work for our children,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Very true indeed. Yeah,
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. They're our future.
yeah.
So,
And
absolutely.
may I just mention very quickly, in Sweden, we have a local hamburger company. We have, of course, the big American ones like McDonald's and Burger King and so on, but we have a local Swedish one called Max Hamburger. And I was sitting on a tram some months ago, and I looked at the father reading to his little daughter from a book, and I noticed that the book had been given at one of the visits to the hamburger joint Max. And I was just looking at it, and suddenly I saw, hmm, what is the title? Well, the title in Swedish was, and I translate to English, Where Did All the Bees Go?
Wow.
It was about the reduction of honeybees and other pollinators. And I was very impressed. Wow, that a company like that would hand out such a free gift to the children, but a free gift with a real meaning, also for the parent. And I talked to the father, and he said, yeah, I'm very, very worried about all the insects where I live. There are hardly any left at all, he said.
Do you have any other manuscripts that are awaiting publication you'd care to share
Well,
about?
but as I said, we are struggling, and I mean, I don't really like to talk about it
Right.
because I don't want to brag or something like that. But in those papers, we are presenting thoughts, reflections, hypotheses that are overwhelming, I would say. And like the paper I told you about, we had sent to this American Beekeepers Journal. I actually wrote to the editor and said that, please forgive me, but I think this is the most important paper I have ever written. And I have been authoring or co authoring, while I lost track, 800, 900 papers, something like that. So we have done a fair bit of authoring, but I feel this particular manuscript is extremely important to get out there. And hopefully, thank God, I say, if we can get it published, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. And like you say, and you not bragging, you're amazing. Well, I mean, there's a reason you're a world leading authority on health impacts from environmental wireless technology. And you've done many papers and you've presented all over the world with your lectures. And if others viewing this will look at our first video, I think we posted it last August. You'll see
Yeah,
links to your work, your bio, your field of
yeah,
work, and it is beyond stellar for sure. And for you to label this as possibly your best effort, that is huge. And what can we do to get more financial wind beneath your wings?
yeah.
And we will.
Yeah, it's so simple in a way, you know. If you feel you're worried and concerned about this, for instance, parents, and you probably will have our fundraiser link posted again. They could just go there and use PayPal, or if they want to send electronically from their own bank, they can do that directly to our research bank account. And anything, $1, $2, $10, anything will make a difference if people will do it. It's very important that you don't think that your neighbor will do it and you can forget about it. No, don't, please. And it takes less than a minute to go through the link, tap the donate link, and get some money over. And we need it. I have to be honest on that part. We need it.
Absolutely. And yes, we will have those links below for everyone to look at. But, Professor, you're so generous with your time, with responding to people reaching out to you, and in vehicles like we're putting together here. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know I speak on behalf of every living being who eats for a living. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you so
And
much.
Barrett, thank you for joining us today and with the update. And we hope to check in with you again in another 6 to 8 months. And
Yeah,
hopefully you'll be able to see, yes, I have the funding that's got me further down that road. And so we'll have a sunnier report coming
yeah.
out.
And you know, next time I hope this room will be filled with the bees and wasps and other, you know. So I hope they will come back because here in Sweden, it's so empty nowadays. There are so,
Absolutely. And when you go to refuel your Harley Davidson motorcycle, you will find that bucket with a sponge to clean
yeah,
off your
yeah,
windshield.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That's such a good point. And it's so telling, you know, you don't need it. And I asked around at petrol stations, and they say, oh, we took it away many years ago. There are no insects being killed or spotted on cars any longer.
You know what? That should be the end of the story. In a court
Yeah,
case, they could say, I rest my case, right? Right there on that point alone.
yeah.
So, well, thank you again, Professor. Keep up the great work. We'll do our best to send those dollars toward you. Thank you. Bye for now.